Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2. This week, you will be learning about reading instruction that will assist your students with becoming lifelong readers. We're going to be looking at 2 important aspects of the balanced literacy framework. We're going to be looking at the elements of shared reading and interactive read aloud. These instructional practices play a key role in decoding and comprehension instruction. Children of all ages love to hear books read aloud. Oftentimes, toddlers and preschoolers have a favorite that they want read over and over and over again. Well, as a teacher, you'll rely on that love for familiar texts to help your children become growing independent readers. Shared reading can be used throughout grade levels to negotiate text as a community and explicitly teach comprehension and decoding strategies. And when I say throughout grade levels, I'm talking pre-K through 12. Shared reading and interactive read-along also is highly beneficial for English language learners. As you view the videos this week of shared reading and interactive read aloud, think about the differences and similarities between the two. Be mindful of how your thinking shifts regarding best practices for reading to and or with children. This is going to be part of your literacy beliefs project, which will be due week 8. I want to talk for a moment about chapter 3 in our text guided reading. On page 61, Fountas and Pinnell list values of shared reading for early readers. What does it do for those children? It helps them develop an understanding of the concepts of print. It builds language skills and enhances vocabulary. It builds students' understanding of different types of text formats and language structures. It encourages personal and critical responses to text. It gives every child the experience of success, just to name a few of those values. Page 62, they talk about selecting the text for shared reading, which is extremely important. Most of the time, the stories that you're using for early readers in shared reading is going to be fiction. You want to think about texts that provide early experiences with print. It needs to be an enlarged, simple text, colorful illustrations. Is it going to keep their attention? Does the text lead the development of the early learning process? You want to select texts that promote the construction of meaning and the development of language. Page 65 talks about tools and materials that are needed for shared reading. The components of a shared reading lesson for early readers begins on page 67. And I would like for you to note figure 314, which is on page 68 and 69 of our text, which is the basic components of a shared reading lesson for early readers. When you introduce the shared reading text for the first time, the teacher reads the text to the children. You might want to point out a few things, but you are reading it to the students. You're modeling how that reading should go. The next reading, or the second reading, is where you read it with the children. You're going to be discussing the text. Engage them in discussion. Encourage their thinking. You're going to teach for strategic actions. Have students locate words by predicting the first letter or another word feature. Make connections between words. Teach students how to check on their reading using meaning, structure, or visual phonological information. There's repeated readings with shared reading. That shared reading text can also be used as an independent reading for students. And it also can serve as an opportunity for students to further their own writing of text. You may do an shared or interactive writing based on that shared reading. They may create their own writings based on that shared reading. There's so many benefits of shared reading. Page 70 begins a shared reading lesson, and it walks you through the steps of the lesson. Chapter 4, Shared and Performance Reading Across the Grades, talks about how shared reading changes over time. On page 84, figure 4.1, talks about how the texts change over time from emergent readers to early readers to intermediate level readers, and then how those goals also change for each group of readers. Some of the values of shared reading for intermediate and middle level readers: it creates a social situation in which students work together on a text, provides a setting where you, the teacher, can demonstrate ways of working on problem-solving text, makes difficult concepts and texts accessible, gives students an opportunity to notice the characteristics of a genre, just to name a few. Those can be found on page 85. The texts that you use for the intermediate or middle level readers are different than what you would use for emergent readers. Page 88 talks about big books that you might use with these intermediate readers. You can use poems. Also, please remember, nonfiction texts can also be used for shared reading. Reader's theater. Writing in response to shared reading is a great way to springboard students into writing. Page 94 talks about this, so please pay close attention to that. Teaching for strategic actions is discussed on page 96. If you have questions about this, please ask me. Your discussion forum for week 2 is, after reviewing the material, explain your understanding of the differences and similarities between shared reading and interactive read aloud. How do they fit as part of the balanced literacy classroom? What can be taught through shared reading? What can be taught through interactive read aloud? How can these practices benefit the diverse learning needs of students? Be sure to use 2 additional sources in your response, as well as using our guided reading text. So you should have 3 sources cited in your initial post. If you have questions, please ask me.